Hey guys, this is for CC Cycle 1, Week 21. We're doing Orchestra. This is our third week of Orchestra, and we're still in the Baroque era, but we are focusing this week on Johann Sebastian Bach. So I like to start off with just barely any review, just to kind of get their minds thinking about what we did last week. So I'm probably going to ask them what composer did we focus on last week and what piece was that, just to get their minds kind of rolling. And then I'm going to introduce Bach. So some interesting things about him. I think it's kind of cool to make the connection that he and Handel were born in the same year. They were also both born in Germany. And at one point they were living about 80 miles from each other. They composed and worked during the same time, but the two never met. So that's very interesting to me. Bach did try to set up a meeting at one point, but they just never ended up meeting. But the difference is he and Handel, we talked about last week how his dad was just not really supportive of his music. And in this situation, Bach's dad was a 7th generation musician. So he comes from a long line of musicians. And his dad was also named Johann Bach. And he actually had 5 brothers, all named Johann Bach. And 3 of his brothers ended up being musicians and composers as well. So it really runs in the family. They're very supportive of each other. So Johann's father, like I said, was a 7th generation musician, and he helped Bach with playing the violin and teaching him about music. And although Bach did lose both of his parents by the age of 10, one of his brothers kind of took that on and continued to teach him about music and taught him how to play the organ. So I thought that was pretty cool. Another thing that I want to mention is that Bach would write I and J on his manuscripts. He was very religious. So I and J was Latin for in nomen Jesus, and that meant in the name of Jesus. So I'm going to share that with them too. I thought that was kind of cool. And also Bach did suffer blindness. I think he had like a bad surgery or something like that. He did suffer blindness just like Handel. But when he had a stroke, he did end up dying from that. So I'm just going to share some cool and interesting facts about Bach. You can look up your own or you can use mine. Just find out some cool, interesting things and share that with your class. And then I'm going to move right into this piece. So I feel like I have more to say about the piece itself and the techniques more than I do like pausing it and talking about the instruments, because we're not hearing a lot of different families with this piece. We're just hearing the harpsichord. So, but I feel like I have so much that I want to say about this piece. So starting off, it is called the Well-Tempered Clavier, and it is Book 2, Prelude and Fugue in C major. So the reason they picked this one in Classical Music for Dummies was because it's the first one in that book, and it's also pretty simple composition. It's all in C major, so they're just using only the white keys for that. I hope that makes sense. So when Bach wrote the Well-Tempered Clavier, it was really a composition to help teach his students different techniques and methods on the keyboard. So I want to break down the name of this. So a fugue, actually let's come back to that. It would just be easier to talk about clavier. So clavier is just like any keyboard, like string keyboard instrument. So at this time, it was mostly just the, you're going to hear the harpsichord in this. So this is just strictly the harpsichord, but it could also mean like a clavichord. So the difference is that the harpsichord, when you're playing that and pressing the keys, the strings are being plucked, but in the clavichord, there are striking them. And so a clavichord is really it's very, very similar to a piano, or the original name was pianoforte. And I don't know if you've seen some of my 10 whistle videos, but the reason it's called pianoforte, when we learned in 10 whistle, piano means soft and forte means loud. This was an amazing instrument where you could do like higher or softer notes and louder, like you could do loud and soft. So that was really cool. With the harpsichord, it didn't matter how hard you struck it to pluck the strings. It didn't change the volume at all. So that's very, very different. So when the pianoforte, or piano as we know it, came out that was very different. We can strike it and it can get louder. So I don't know, just some background on that. You do not have to share all that. I'm just sharing with you, and you can pick what you want. So the clavier, the Well-Tempered Clavier, this was to help his students and teach techniques on keyboard type instruments. So whether it be the clavichord or the harpsichord. So the one we're listening to today is with the harpsichord. There are many versions of this exact song, but played on the piano. So you can check those out too if you want. All right, so now let's talk about a fugue. And I'm going to try to break this down as simple as possible because this gets very in-depth and you can almost get a little lost in it if you're not familiar with it. So don't let this overwhelm you. I'm just giving you information, and you can go as deep with it as you want, or you can just stay on the surface. So, okay, so a fugue. That is kind of like a melody that's introduced by one part and then it's taken up by other parts. So then you have different voices coming in and playing together. Now, when you have these different voices, so here we have one melody and it's doing its voice. Then you have another one that comes in, and now they're both playing together, but they're harmonizing too. And that's when you have a counterpart. That's what that's called. So when you start to realize how this was made and how it was put together, you start to realize that Bach was a genius. He's amazing. And he was just born. He was just born to do this. So what we're going to have is this one's going to have 4 different voices, but you can do more than that. And Bach did. But in this piece, it's just 4. So I'm trying to explain this in the best way. So in the beginning of the song, you hear the harpsichord and it's just doing a prelude, okay? It's actually like half of the song. It's like 2 minutes and 22 seconds or something like that of just the prelude. So you're just going to hear the harpsichord doing this introduction, doing this prelude, and then it stops and it sounds like it's over. But then we introduce the fugue. So in the beginning of the fugue, if it's just a regular fugue, there's double fugues, there's triple fugues, and I can kind of explain those in a minute. In the beginning of the fugue, you have one voice introducing the subject, okay? Then other voices, this is a typical fugue. There's different kinds where you can do different rules, but I really just kind of want to focus on this one, a standard fugue, and I don't want to like get lost. If anybody's like a music major, please don't write me and hold me accountable for this. I know there's other fugues that you could do, but in this typical fugue that we're going to be looking at, you're going to have the one voice coming in and introducing the subject. Then the second voice comes in and does the counter subject. Like I said, in different fugues, you can do different pieces that aren't introducing a counter subject, and they're just doing like an episode where it's not gonna stick. It's not gonna be important. I really hope I'm not losing anybody. So in this fugue, we're going to hear voice 1 introduce the subject. Then voice 2 is going to come in and do its own melody. That's the counter subject. It's going to harmonize with voice 1. Then voice 3 is going to come in, more subject. And then voice 4 comes in, counter subject, and it's playing its own thing. And all 4 voices are harmonized together, which again makes a counterpart. So I hope that did not confuse you. In a double fugue, that's where you have 2 voices starting at the same time, introducing 2 different subjects. And Bach even did triple fugues, where you have 3 voices coming in, introducing 3 subjects. The man was a genius. I could never even begin to understand what went on in his brain. He was amazing. So don't get this confused with like a canon. So a canon would be when there's 2 or 3 voices, but they're all singing the same thing, but maybe at different times, like Frère Jacques, and then you sing like in a round, like a canon. That's different than a fugue. What we're listening to here, you're going to hear voice 1 come in with the subject, voice 2 is going to come in with the counter subject, 3, and then 4, like I explained. So it's very mathematical. It is very just deep with music logic. It's so impressive. I'm just so impressed with him. So anyway, so that's what we're going to hear today. So I'll let that play a little bit, and I'll point out, there's really not much to point out in the prelude. We don't have different families of instruments coming in. It's just the harpsichord, and that's fine. We can sit and enjoy that. And then I'll point out when voice 1 starts with the subject. Voice 2 will come in, voice 3, voice 4. And what's funny is that they're all playing their own little melody, their subjects and their counter subjects. But like I said, with the counterpart, they all harmonize together. It's really amazing. So I will go ahead and play that now. So again, in the beginning, it's just the prelude. So this is the harpsichord. Again, this is written in C major. They're only using the white keys, not any of the black ones. So it's very simple. We're almost to the end of the prelude. Finishing up the prelude right now. So that was the prelude, and now I paused it. We're about to come into the fugue, and so like I said, you'll hear voice 1. I'll just kind of hold up 1, and then when I hear 2, and then when I hear 3, and then when I hear 4. Also, I would like to say, if you want to use your Classical Music for Dummies book, this one, you can follow along. It starts on page 139 and continues on to page 140. So feel free to use that as well. And so now we will start the fugue, and you'll hear that first voice still on the harpsichord. And then soon, like very soon after, you hear voice 2, then voice 3, and voice 4. And then notice how they all play together. Voice 4 is pretty easy to pick out too. It's much higher than the rest. So you'll hear that one come in, and they just all play in harmony together. So here we go. That's 2. 3, 4. Fourth one's higher. 4 different melodies, all playing together, following the subject. And sometimes too, I like to pick one that I'm going to listen to and try my best to follow it. It's so hard. I mean, he was seriously brilliant because they go together so well that it's hard to just stick with one. He was amazing. So you can hear a similar melody going on, and it's really, honestly, like I said before, it's hard to pick just one and stick with it. The easiest one for me is the lowest one. I can follow that one pretty well, and the highest one, I can follow that pretty well. It's the two in the middle that's hard for me to stick with, but that's just because he wrote it so well. But you can, if you listen very closely, listen to this over and over and over again. Like I said last week, listen to it while you're brushing your teeth, while you're doing dishes. Just listen to it over and over and over again. And you will start to hear that similar melody being played by the different voices. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of the song. It's very, the song itself is very simple sounding. You don't have to look out for a lot of different instruments. It's just really the setup of a fugue is just kind of complex and complicated for some to understand. So just take your time with that. You can rewatch this video. You can watch videos on fugues and stuff like that. If you want, just go as deep with it as you want. If you really don't want to, then just stick to the surface of it if it's intimidating for you. But I hope you and your class enjoy this one by Bach. I know the harpsichord isn't the best sounding instrument to some people. My 3-year-old does not like this song. He always asks me to turn it off. I don't think he likes the sound of the harpsichord. But even if you don't like the sound of the harpsichord, there's still an appreciation there for the genius that Bach was and how he composed and put these together. This wasn't even his hardest piece. They chose something very simple. So it's just mind-blowing, and it's easy to admire his work. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. I hope you enjoy this week. I hope it's going very well for you, and don't panic. Just take it a little bit at a time. Listen to the song over and over again until you get a little more familiar with it. All right, thanks guys.